just really briefly, I want to get this out there because I've been thinking about it a lot. And I'm really interested in the idea of cancel culture. What just happened with Call Me Carson got me thinking about it. Suffice to say that I don't actually care about the current like drama and like what ifs or whatever. Like I'm not going to be offering an opinion on like what I think like ought happen as a result of these things. I just think that the sort of idea around it is really, really interesting about how it works and how people think it works versus how it actually works. Let's talk about the phenomenon first, okay? And this is I'm going to use Carson as an example in a couple of these things because it's topical as to right now, which is essentially this Call Me Carson just recently, and I mean like last night, there was some logs from his Discord that came out that allude that he had some sexual messages with a person that was 17 years old when he was 19 years old, and that there are some implications of like a power dynamic or the word grooming, like right. And again, I'm not offering any opinion on this. I'm not that sort of dude. I have my own opinions on it, but it's beyond the scope of like what I'm doing here. Right. And I don't like care to follow drama and shit like that. What I do want to offer is like what happened. And like, we need to like look at this and also in the context of some of the things that have happened in the past, like why this is really interesting. Okay. So as a result, like there's been this like trending topic, like worldwide on Carson for the entire day and much of last night. There have been tens of thousands of tweets and there's been like an enormous amount of like response and like calls for like stuff to happen and like things like that. And so I want to say like what when I say cancel culture, we have to define that first, right? So like what I'm saying is like the phenomenon of large mobs of social media people going after influencers for perceived or actual faults, calling for any number of negative outcomes to happen, which is usually deplatforming, jail or arrest or total surrender, disappearance of this person. Is that a pretty good definition? I think that's like a pretty good definition of like cancel culture. And I want to talk about like how there's so many things going through my head that's really interesting about this that like once I start telling you this stuff, it's going to be really crazy once we put this all together. So the first most interesting thing about cancel culture and the most pertinent question, the thing we're all going to be wondering is, does it work? Does cancel culture work? Like, does it really cancel people? And the answer is unequivocally no. And this is probably the most interesting thing is that so cancel culture always makes influencers more prominent than less, unless a few things happen. And this is like a really interesting thing. So one of the things that I show people a lot is the graph of alinity. When alinity, I have a thing on my bookmark bar called Daily Reminder of Publicity. And this is when alinity tossed her cat, allegedly. This is like a graph of her viewership and her views over time. So we looked at this like over the last 30 days and the increase in viewership. Okay. This is a really classic example of this happening, but you can see this everywhere. Is that like usually when someone kind of quotes gets canceled, what happens is a concept called earned media. This is really fascinating. Earned media equals impressions that you don't pay for or you don't yourself create. Or another way to say it is people talking about you. It's one of the most interesting aspects of social media and marketing today. And what YouTube has found, which I think YouTube is like they are the best platform in terms of understanding user behavior. Facebook comes close, but YouTube in a lot of ways has like different but just as relevant metrics. So YouTube figured out that a negative engagement on a video is as valuable as a positive engagement on a video for retention, chance that user is going to come back, advertising impressions, etc. And because of this, they equalized the formula for YouTube algorithm, which is well known now, that likes and dislikes actually count the same. Before, dislikes used to derank you in YouTube search. There's going to be some people that disagree with this, but anybody that understands YouTube to any degree understands that the negative and positive engagement on YouTube is the same. If you dislike a video, you're actually adding as much to that search engine result as you are alike. The way that it happened was at first, when YouTube like first kind of like was starting to figure out their algorithm, dislikes actually deranked videos in the search engine. So you could actually like mass dislike a video and that video would disappear from search results effectively. Then they changed it to be a little bit more equal so that dislikes were still negative, but and likes were better. Then they actually made it equal. And then for a while, they actually made it that dislikes were actually higher value than likes. And then finally, they sort of like equalized it where it currently says today, at least based on our current understanding. Now, why would YouTube do this? Well, the idea of earned media, right, is an impression. And the keyword is an emotional impression of a person on you. And that doesn't actually matter if it's negative or positive. Because if it's negative, that impression is this makes me angry. I want to talk about this. I got to tell people about this. But that blast radius that goes out from like a negative Reddit thread, for example, might hit, let's say, 10,000 people. And that those 10,000 people, maybe 2,000 of them didn't know who you were before at all. Or more importantly, there's a marketing concept we're going to be going over a lot in this talk because this is a lot of like really crazy, interesting marketing concepts. But there's a marketing concept called a passive audience. What a passive audience is an audience that's aware of you, but right now doesn't really think you're doing anything cool and hasn't checked you out in a while. How many of you guys have seen a Twitch stream like when Pokimane comes on to talk about something and she instantly has twice the viewers? Why is that the case? The answer is the marketing concept passive audience. There is always a passive audience that is waiting to see what you do. Right now, if I really did something dramatic enough, like it's like I am going to talk about the Bob 7 CallMeCarson drama and I'm going to tell you the truth behind this streamer that no one knows, and I'm going to totally take down their career, and I'm going to do it in a hot tub with 6 hot chicks at the same time. That's going to get me 10,000 viewers right now, right? There's an audience of people that are sitting out there that are waiting for something like that to happen if your passive audience reach is high enough and if people understand you to be in that place, okay? So when your passive audience kind of gradually forgets about you, I mean, you have like your dedicated core audience, and I've explained this in the way of like circles before, where this is like a pretty easy concept where like the closer to the core, you have some people here that will like check out anything you do, but the vast majority of people like are somewhere else on this target board, right? And so like the people out here may not have heard of you for like a month. They may not have heard of you for like 6 months. But all of a sudden, because the earned media actually brings it back to the front, all of a sudden you're now thinking about that person and consuming their content again. And then, so what actually happens is that impression actually lasts for a long time, and people will actually come back and will watch that person again. And so, like, you very well might have a negative thing happen, but like 2,000 people that didn't think about you before for the last like 3 months because you didn't do anything that was that crazy will now know about you. And because of this, the smartest people, or I should say the most malevolent or manipulative on these platforms, understand this concept and they farm it over and over and over again. People like Keemstar that are constantly controversial. There's always something going on about them. You can know people like this. Martin Shkreli did this for a very long time, like where it's like it's this they know that they, and the giant media companies are experts at this, right? Is that they know that they can constantly farm your outrage and that you will continuously come back to it and give them ad impressions and give them earned media that then allows them to reach other audiences that don't feel the way you do. And as a result, they get bigger and they make more money. So cancel culture has this effect on people and can't actually cancel anything. If anything, it actually boosts the sort of signal of these broadcasters and makes it more prominent the worse that it is because of the aforementioned reasons. Now, keep in mind that I said it always makes influencers more prominent unless a few things happen. So what are the things that happen when cancel culture actually works, right? And it actually cancels someone. Most people think that cancel culture works because you do indeed see some people get banned, not create content. And most people think that that's because of their pressure, but it actually isn't. So how does someone actually get canceled? Now, this is I think this is going to be the most fascinating part of this talk, okay? So right here, this is a search range of partners that got banned on Twitch in 2020 summer when people were talking about the Me Too movement. Basically, what happened was like a lot of women in the gaming industry came out and started talking about what was happening behind the scenes in a lot of different communities with a lot of legitimate cases of abuse to women, sometimes underage people. And you're going to see a lot of names in here that got banned, but you're going to see a theme here. And that theme is that every single broadcaster that actually got platform banned made a written confession. And to a man, the ones that didn't, despite overwhelming evidence on them, did not. So what happened here? Because let me like real quick back up real quick and tell you what I think an actual cancellation is. An actual cancellation that like super screws you up and like messes you up is literally a deplatform from Twitter, Twitch, Facebook, YouTube. Okay, so like the example of somebody that would quite literally have gotten fully deplatformed is like an Alex Jones. Okay, so like Alex Jones like quite literally got canceled. He was dropped on YouTube. He was dropped on Twitch. No, he's not on Twitch, but he's dropped on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. Like the tech companies as a whole completely decided to deplatform him. This was an actual concentrated hit to his brand. If you actually get canceled in this way, then you really are canceled. But I want to like sort of exemplify how rare this is and why it's so rare. So every single broadcaster that actually got banned on Twitch during that time had written a written confession admitting to it. Several broadcasters that, in my opinion, had overwhelming evidence against them did not get banned. And I want to be very careful here because I need to tell a story in relation to this. During the summer 2020 cancellation, there were two companies. I can't tell you who they were and I can't tell you what happened, but I can tell you that this happened, okay? And I watched it happen. Both CEOs of each company, respectively, in the same industry, were accused of similar sexual harassment. The first CEO went to Twitter, just starting to be really careful because I don't want to identify people. So went to Twitter, instantly posted like a 15 to 20 thread thing about the issue. The second CEO went silent themselves on Twitter for 3+ months, but their company posted that they understood the allegations and were doing a third-party investigation. Fast forward 1 month. What happens? The first CEO, now I'm telling a true story. This is a true story of two people that I watched this happen. And the first CEO, well, the business literally imploded. Everyone left, employees, clients, everything. The business today is non-existent. It was a massive shakeup at the time in the summer. It's literally non-existent. The Twitter threads were received incredibly negatively, and people voluntarily left the company just directly, and not even within the first month. Within the first 48 hours, they were gone. It was it. Second CEO, there were 2 tweets total. The company tweeted 3 months later that the allegations had been third-party verified and no misconduct was found. Now, I want to stress, we didn't know what company was the third-party investigation in this. We didn't know anything about it. There were 2 tweets total. The CEO went completely silent on Twitter. Fast forward 1 month, what happened? To this day, the company is a prominent force in the gaming industry, and that CEO is active right now. And that's the difference. It was literally the same exact industry, a totally different way of handling it. But it illustrates something very interesting, doesn't it? You would think that in most cases of leadership, right, it makes the most amount of sense to take ownership of something. And when you've done something wrong in a company, like to your employees or something like that, you taking ownership of something is a sign of being a strong and accountable person and a strong leader. And I encourage like taking ownership of things in your own life and everywhere. Very interestingly, like this is not the case with cancel culture, where the opposite is true. That if you simply don't take ownership of things, just kind of like let it die, that you will just kind of get past it. And this is a concept that we're going to move into. Let's call this the fickle crowd. Okay, so the news cycle and the drama cycle is so fast that if you're willing to just wait out something, it just passes. So I've thought of this a lot with a couple of streamers that had, I mean, just ironclad allegations against them during the summer cancellation. All they did was they turned on sub chat. They didn't talk about it at all, and they just waited for that to blow over. If you remember that movie, Hot Fuzz, where it's like we're gonna go to the Winchester, gonna get a drink, and we're just gonna wait for this all to blow over, and it worked. It worked perfectly. Those streamers are still there to this day, and their viewership is up. You never hear anything in their chat. And again, I really don't want anyone to try to guess who these people are. Like, let's get past that. That's whatever. It's just I mean, everyone who was following it kind of like knows who these people are. But this is just a very interesting marketing concept that like and this is the point. Here's what's going to happen, right? Going back to the Call Me Carson situation, I'll show you. The only way other than deplatforming, and I want to say how difficult deplatforming actually is. The only way to actually get canceled is to cancel yourself. It's to let the pressure of the situation mentally affect you so negatively that you stop either stop uploading or stop creating, cancel yourself, which is like what Zero did, right? Like Zero quite literally was like, I'm just never gonna make content again, and then I'll stream on Facebook, but that's about it. And there's several other broadcasters that committed to that as well. But if you can lean into it and either stay silent for X number of months, or you can lean into it and literally double down. Like you could just post videos and say, "Yep, like this happened." Like and again, I want to stress how much I'm not trying to pass any kind of judgment. I'm not trying to say if this is right or wrong. I am fascinated in marketing concepts. I'm fascinated in business, and I'm fascinated in how things work. I'm fascinated in how stuff works. I have no judgment to pass on Carson or anyone I've talked about, or whatever. I have my own opinions on everything like this. I'm not sharing them. This is purely a marketing talk. One of the people who has proven throughout the past 4 years to be one of the most prominent people around this is Donald Trump, right? Now, what love him or hate him or whatever you think about him, again, I'm not here to pass an opinion on it. I think everybody on both sides of the aisle can realize what a master marketer he is, right? Where if someone says like, okay, what are you going to do? He says, we're going to build a wall. We're going to keep Hispanic people out. Well, what? You can't do that. He says, you know what? I'm going to build it twice as big. Every single time that somebody comes at him, he doubles down. And it's like it just the outrage. There seems to be no upper limit to this working. Like the marketing is just infinitely effective as long as you get people to have some kind of emotional response. And you don't cancel yourself. You're either so narcissistic that you don't let yourself be canceled, or, which is in the case of a lot of people, like I think the Keemstar type people, right, where they're literally just so narcissistic that they think that everything is revolves around them and they can't be wrong, so that they just don't let anybody cancel them, or they just keep doubling down. They understand this concept from sort of a marketing manipulation standpoint, the way that we're talking about it, and then they utilize this as a tool to manipulate you. Either way, they're invulnerable. They get more and more popular, and nobody can really stop them. And every voice that is a dissenter to them becomes an actual opinion. Becomes an actual amplifier, becomes a signal to whatever their message is. Because again, it's helping them reach that passive audience. It's helping them re-engage with their fans. To quote Logan Paul, I rely on my haters to be the amplifier for my content. It's a literal quote from Impulsive. He understands this concept very dramatically, that like the people that are emotionally charged to talk about him are going to be the people that actually are his brand. In some cases, in many cases, are actually more valuable to him than his supporters. Because his supporters might not necessarily be the people that are like talking about him all the time, but these guys that are living rent free in their head, they're just posting about him all the time. They're talking about him all the time, and this is constantly creating this passive marketing for him, which is endlessly getting them more viewership. And if you look at these people, like the people that are trying to cancel Pokemon, or the people that are trying to cancel Keemstar, or the people that are trying to cancel Donald Trump, it's not working, right? Like they're just like it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So let's talk about short-term effects of cancellation. you might look at something like this, for example, which is a chart of CallMeCarson's unfollows right now, right? So this is a live chart of CallMeCarson's, like, because this is, as of this talk, this is right in the drama. So this is happening today, okay? So Carson right now has lost 13,561 followers. He has not gone live. He has a total of 1,389,011 followers. Okay, so as a percentage, he has lost 0.97% of his total follower base, which is nothing. Okay, that's absolutely nothing. Let's go to his YouTube. His YouTube has 3.24 million and thus far has lost a little bit over 100,000 followers. So again, let's just say it's 150,000. Go to 3.24 million, which by calculation is about 4.6% of the audience. Okay, so I want to stress here just how like insignificant this is, because this is what's crazy about this, man. And this is like what's so crazy about marketing and psychology. That 150,000 people are people that actively made a decision to engage with Call Me Carson. They went to his channel, they pressed the unsubscribe button. Do you think that person is interested in figuring out what happens next? Do you think they're invested in the story? Of course they are. Of course they are. The first time that an apology comes out, that it's that there's a big stream, that is going to be the person that is there absolutely the first time. This is a concept that Activision and EA understood, that EA especially understands, that you can literally make the most dog shit game over and over again. And no matter how many people say they're going to boycott it, no matter how many people say that this is the end, that audience is an incredibly minuscule percentage of the people that will actually buy it and the people that will come back to buy it again and again and again. And we see this over and over again in marketing. Boycotting doesn't work. Crowd hating something doesn't work. It just makes it bigger. The only way to kill something is to ignore it in this society, because either a negative or positive impression creates a marketing amplifier that then goes out to the people that you don't want to hear it. The only way to kill something is to stop talking about it. But our society trains everybody to do the opposite. And so what happens is that everybody starts to talk about this issue and the exact opposite thing happens. The haters become the fuel for the very thing they're trying to destroy. The unsubscribers don't matter. In the grand scheme of things, it's a tiny percentage. And as soon as the content starts up again, they'll be right back with them. Again, we've seen this through studies of the game industry over and over and over again. Every single person that said they're not going to buy Diablo 4 because Diablo 3 was dog shit, including myself, are going to be on that game day one, because we're invested in the narrative. And it's not the individual user behavior that matters. It is the story. And as long as you're hooked on the story, you'll keep coming back to figure out what happens. We've seen this in every drama. We've seen it in every soap opera. We see it in every creator, and we see it here. That's what it's about, man. It's what makes this concept so interesting, and it's why I wanted to talk about it. It's because the idea is that the crowd is just as fickle. Not only will they forget about something, but as soon as they're back again, they'll be back for it once over, like over and over again. That's how it works. So so smart people that have figured this formula out are manipulating it like crazy. And the most classic example of this that I think everybody can look to is the United States media. But there are other people like influencers that understand this as well. Some of them are our most prominent creators, like Logan Paul, who just outright admits on his podcast, like, he literally tells you the magic trick. He tells you exactly how he pulls the rabbit out of the hat. He quite literally says it cannot be misconstrued. I use my haters to work for me. He talks 30 minutes about this, and it's fascinating. He shows you the trick because he knows that it doesn't matter. The people that are going to be talking about him are not consuming that content. They're not looking at his podcast. They are on the outside of this blast radius. This concept we've talked about here. They're on the outside over here, right? And they're just talking about it and talking about it and talking about it. And they probably know very little of what's actually going on. Like the vast majority of people that are Call Me Carson, like all these names and whatever not. And again, just like not passing judgment, but I'm just saying they probably haven't taken the time to like actually look into and like really figure out like what's going on and what information is available and make like an objective opinion. They're just like kind of tweeting into the multiverse. So the most intelligent people, I don't know if intelligent is the right word. I think manipulative is the right word. The most manipulative people on these social media platforms have understood this and utilized this, and now they are using this intentionally in order to manipulate you. And the best thing you can do is just be aware of it. But it's a very prominent thing that, like, once you understand how this psychology works, you start to see it everywhere. And you're like, oh, I'm being intentionally manipulated again. So the real, let's go back to cancel culture, going to canceling yourself. If you have any sort of actual conscience, unfortunately, the people who have the most emotional, like the highest emotional quotients and the highest ethics are the most likely to be canceled by these things, because these are the people who actually care about what they're doing. You see, you'll never get through to the narcissists. The more you tell them to cancel themselves, the more they'll make content. If you talk to someone who's egoic as fuck, like me, like I'm arrogant as fuck, you tell me I can't do something, I'll just do it twice as much, right? It's like if you tell me I can't eat chicken, I'll eat 3, right? Like, you can't convince a narcissist to stop, but if you actually get in front of someone with high emotional, I'd say like emotional awareness, like empathy, and then you start to make them feel bad about the content they create, they'll actually slow down and stop creating. And a lot of people, this is like the real dark side of cancel culture, I think, is that a lot of people that this happens to fucking don't deserve it. Like Lily Pichu constantly gets a ton of hate, and she said so many times that she can't help but read all of the Reddit comments and take that to heart, even though she doesn't deserve it. She's a fantastic creator. Pokimane, absolutely same thing. One of the hardest working women on this platform, absolutely does not deserve these bullshit YouTube things that get made about her and all these things, right? But if she says it several times, she's very heavily affected by it. Why? Because these are actually emotionally intelligent, put together human beings who have an ethic. Like, the people that are going after these people are trying to destroy the people that are actually doing a lot of the good work in many cases. They're not actually going after the narcissists who deserve to be taken down. In any productive way. They're just shouting at those people, and those narcissists are farming them, literally farming them into these hate groups that then go after legitimate content creators. It's the most unfortunate and sucky part of all this. It's what bothers me the most, right? And I remember when I was running esports teams back in the LCS days, we had players that would go on Reddit in tears. They would go on our League of Legends, they would read people posting things about themselves, and they would not want to play anymore. And a lot of them actually quit because they just couldn't take that heat. So the people that actually end up getting canceled are the ones that are ironically the ones that are actually willing to fucking self-improve a lot of the time, because they're the ones that, it's not to say that like offering legitimate criticism to somebody isn't productive, but like most of the influencers that these groups of people are targeting know what they're doing wrong. I'm talking about the ones that are like, you know, that aren't deserving of this. And furthermore, are the sort of people that actually have a decent degree of ethics and are willing to apply that to try to change to be better people. That's the people we're actually canceling, because those guys have enough, those people have enough of a feeling to actually respond to it, which sucks. Like, we should be canceling the Spurglors. We should be canceling the people that are causing the problems, but instead we're canceling the people that are actually at the forefront of trying to make them better in a lot of cases. And yeah, it's just really unfortunate. I want to talk about this real briefly. We put an enormous amount of burden on influencers on Twitch and YouTube in particular. I often say that, like, I'm a little bit lucky that I skipped a generation or two on the way to the internet. Because if you guys knew me when I was 16 to 20, I'd be canceled 100%. I got thrown out of public school because of fighting, right? That I can talk about now. But like, I know a lot of people in my friend group that's the exact same way, because to expect these 19-year-old content creators, or 20 or 21 or 22, I'm not referring to anybody specific, but like to expect this like a 22-year-old content creator to suddenly be a Zen master who is befit of a position to lead tens of thousands of people responsibly is asinine. And the amount of forgiveness that we afford to these people is laughable in the face of the fact that the vast majority of people that are casting those stones could not even do so in their own houses because they would break the glass therein. Another way to say that is that the people that are accusing them are just as bad, if not worse. And they get away with it because they're anonymous, yet we hold these 20-year-old creators to these enlightened principles that we ourselves as a society don't follow. And then we make them feel so bad about what they're doing that they quit and they never become the actualized individuals that they ought be to actually properly lead a movement like that. So what this ends up doing, what this like mob of people ends up doing, is setting fire to the people who are in the development of becoming those actualized enlightened people to be able to lead people the right direction. And on the other side of it, encourage narcissists, people deliberately manipulating you, and malevolence to thrive, because those are the people that can get around it, not be affected by it. When a good person who feels bad about themselves already, who has imposter syndrome about being successful, gets 100 negative comments to die in a fire because of something they just tried to create that was cool, that person wants to stop creating forever. I can speak personally to that because I've been that person, and I've also worked with those people for many, many years. Thank God I'm enough of an arrogant asshole to still be here today doing this, because I can be here and give these talks, because holy shit, if I felt even a little bit more empathetic, I might actually listen to those fuckers. And then who knows where I'd be. Probably just running my business on the side, because I don't need the money here, and most of them don't either. They're creative enough, skilled enough, whatever, or already have earned that kind of income that they don't need it. And then there would never be a voice, right? If I listened to everyone like that. So I don't know what I hope to accomplish by this. I think that there's nothing to accomplish, because this is just going to be like, this is just going to go forever. Like, this is it. This is society as it stands right now. But I just think it's really interesting that the actual mechanics, when we sort of break apart how this works, operate the opposite of how everybody thinks they work. And it's one of the most interesting things to consider, that the morality, I'm going to say this. Yeah, this is quite a talk. I hope we're having fun, because here it comes. Okay. The most ironic thing about all this is that cancel culture stands on the foundation of ethics and morality. That everybody that comes out and takes arms up against people thinks that they're doing the highest moral and ethical good. They think that by taking down these influencers, they're defeating evil, literally, right? And they're so virtuous in their tweets and their blog posts and their React videos and their LSF threads. They're so virtuous to this, and they're so prideful in their ability to take down evil. You want to know the real way to take down evil? It's not to go out and bitch about stuff that you can't change anyway and amplify all the messages of hate that you're inadvertently trying to stop, supposedly. It's to actually go out there and you yourself create something of value. If you want to defeat evil in this world, add more good. Be someone that actually takes action and goes out there and creates something meaningful and of value to other people. And through that, you will convert people to watching, to consuming, and to absorbing things of value instead of mindlessly following drama and creating more suffering in their lives and others. If you want to defeat evil, actually go do something. The problem is that it's easy to sit in anonymity and complain and bitch, and then take that as a point of pride that you're doing something productive or you're moving society forward. Where like almost nobody, and like, now there are people that we legitimately need to call out. And I think one of the positives that came from the summer 2020 movement of Twitch was that a lot of women who were really scared for a long time got to speak their mind, because they just had the social support to do so, the cushion to do so. And as a result, I think the gaming industry actually took a step back and was like, you know what? We need to be way more vigilant of this. And going forward, I think that enacts positive change. That was an example of cancel culture done right, IMO, was when a lot of people who had been legitimately slighted, hurt, or abused by power dynamics and circumstances of just terrible circumstances, were able to have a voice. And we should always, always, always allow for that because, speaking for the United States specifically, our system of law has no real recourse to being able to handle that kind of stuff. So, like we've seen over and over again, even internationally, with people like Sweet Anita who have talked about stalking situations, that they're just like without that social pressure, the police station wouldn't have even answered our calls, right? There's just so and there's many people that have talked about this. So these are the kind of stories that need to come out. What I don't want to have happen is this sort of blatant like mob mentality of just burning down anything out of any kind of like manufactured outrage to actually silence those voices, right? When we real like it's the old adage of the boy who cried wolf, right? Is that like when the real injustice happens, we want to be there for it. And luckily, in the summer of 2020, when all of that information came out about women who were legitimately abused in scenarios like this, there was a voice for it. But if you keep abusing and manipulating the minds of the people into these like this drama and manufactured outrage, people will start to become desensitized to it, and then you won't get anything besides like the response of sort of a low tier, low intellectual audience that is just attached to that drama like a lamprey, like like one of those fish on the whale, right? Just sucking it like a parasite. That's the right word. Rather than actually a person who's engaging with it because they want to enact change. And I think what happened in the 2020 thing was that there was a lot of people involved in that who were actual change makers. There's a lot of people that then went out to reform their policies in their companies, pay more attention to these things. A lot of convention goers and people who were more conscious about running those conventions and like started to debate things that are really important. Like, should we have alcohol like in the way that we do? Are we making sure that people get safe rides home? Like, are there support networks in place to handle people who may not have that kind of those resources themselves? A lot of those important questions got asked as a result of that because it was the change makers that were paying attention to that narrative and then decided to enact positive results or positive outcomes. But insofar as we desensitize people by putting out malicious bullshit about people that doesn't matter, you're gonna attract that lowest common denominator, and those people will eventually, the people that actually make any kind of change will eventually leave, and just try to make change on their own. And I think that's the danger of like where cancel culture is moving with a lot of these subjects. So we want to we want to create enough space to allow legitimate voices to be heard. And I think that if I was going to say anything like as sort of a last thought, it's that every single person has the individual ability to understand how this works. And then we have the beautiful ability to consciously step outside of the story and say, you know what? I'm not going to be affected by that anymore. Or I'm going to personally research and do everything that is possible objectively to understand the situation and have a fair and balanced opinion of it. And for every one person that does that, we move up a little bit. And that's what's so cool about it. Is like there's a really good quote by Musashi that says, "Be in this world, but don't be of it." I really love that. I think there's many people that are of this world, that they follow everything. Their emotions drop and rise based on like the latest like Twitch streamer drama or like YouTube drama or anything that's happening, and they're kind of almost puppeteered by this like marketing outrage. And I know it because like I'm a marketer. That's what I do all day. It's all I do is think about this stuff, and I know how much people get influenced and manipulated by these things. But the most powerful thing to realize is that you have a choice. You can actually step back from it and you can say, okay, this is the point where I go forward and make my own decisions. For every single person that does that, we raise consciousness a little bit. That's my talk. I really think this is a very interesting marketing concept. And hopefully, like explaining all this in the way that we did structures it in such a way that it gets you to think about how this works differently.